So in the first episode, we talked about the clue, the accidental enter key, and for whatever reason, you overanalyze this small accident. That moment you realize the universe is trying to get your attention. But now comes the real question. Attention for what? To hand you a standard issue life manual? To give you a map that works for everyone? No. The attention is so you can finally read the map that was written specifically for you. A map etched into the very fabric of your past. A toolkit you've been building your entire life, often without knowing it. You weren't given a standard kit. Your struggles, your pain, your weird joys. This is your native soil. You can't wish for a different plot of land. You have to learn what grows well in the one you've got. We spend so much of our lives trying to fix what's wrong with us. We see our thorns as flaws to be pruned away, our quirks as weaknesses. But what if you stop trying to be a perfect store-bought rosebush and instead learn to value the unique, resilient, and powerful native plant that chose to grow in your soil? Our life didn't give us random trauma. It gave us a specific curriculum, and every lesson came with a tool. Let's do an audit. Let's look at my life as the case study. First, childhood. The soil was often shade. The nutrient was fear. In that shade, you don't get tall, sun-hungry oaks. You get something else. You get a mushroom network. That was my perceptual flexibility, the magic eye. I've never forgotten those magic eye posters from the 90s. You'd stare at a chaotic pattern, and the trick was to relax your focus to look through the surface, and suddenly a 3D image would leap out, hidden in plain sight all along. Now I know why they captivated me. They were a physical drill for a spiritual truth. To see the deeper reality, you must relax the intensity of your everyday perception. My childhood was that chaotic pattern. In the shade and uncertainty, I learned to unfocus my literal eyes and see with a different one. To feel the subtle pressures, hear the unspoken words, and connect dots that existed beneath the surface. What others might call paranoia, I now know was me building a sophisticated underground radar system. It's the mycelial network in the soil of my soul, thriving in the shade because it had to, learning to find the hidden structures in the noise. Then, the teenage years. The soil was hard, compacted. The nutrient was conflict. In that kind of earth, only the hardiest plants survive. You get thorns. And I didn't just grow thorns, I learned to be proud of them. Those thorns were my discipline and critical thinking, forged in the fires of incarceration at a young age, boot camp, gangs. They weren't a flaw I disliked, they were my armor and my credentials. They earned me respect and the sense of belonging in a harsh environment. But even then, my magic eye was active. I paid attention to my peers and noticed something critical. I didn't have the same deep, festering wounds they carried from their homes. I couldn't relate to that particular kind of pain. My thorns were a response to the immediate environment. Theirs seemed to grow from a much older, more poisoned soil. That subtle perception was the first crack. It was profoundly difficult and painful to later separate from that life, to break away from the very identity those thorns had built for me. But the separation was necessary. A truth life would later force upon me with the sledgehammer of deportation. At the time, I saw thorns as protection. Now, I understand they were also a boundary, marking a territory my soul was never meant to permanently inhabit. They said, this far and no further, and eventually, I had to listen. even if it was the hard way. In my 20s, the season changed. The soil was called to provide. The nutrient was love. A thorn can't provide shelter. A new kind of plant is needed. This is when the fruit-bearing tree emerges for me. This was radical responsibility, fatherhood. It was no longer about just protecting myself, but going to prison crystallized the stakes. I looked around and saw the cycle clearly. I was on a path to become a thorn, raising nothing but more thorns in my daughter. I was off to a bad start, but I knew it wasn't too late to turn this around. This was the pivot. I made a choice to use every bit of negativity up to that point as a positive. I wouldn't hide my scars or my past. Instead, I would use them as a living example. I could say, I've been there, I've done that, and I'm telling you, it's not for us. This is not a normal we have to accept. I decided to straighten my trunk as best I could, right there in the prison yard, and use the rings of my experience, the scars, the tattoos, the memories, not as decorations of a hard life, but as lessons etched into my being of what not to do. A tree stands in one place, weathers all storms, and becomes a source of life. Its roots go deep, drawing from all the previous layers, the mycelium network for sensing, the thorny lessons in protection, and transforms it all into something that can sustain others. This was the moment I learned that the highest purpose of our struggles is not just to survive them, but to use them to ensure others don't have to fight the same battles. It was the moment my past started to bear fruit that could truly nourish the future. Then the 30s, a new awareness. The soil was ready for a different kind of light. The nutrient was surrender. After the tree reaches a certain height, it realizes it can't control the sun. It can only orient itself towards it. This is the leaf that turns toward the sun. This was trust and surrender for me. But this wasn't a passive giving up. It was an active conscience opening. After a lifetime of forcing my will upon the world, I finally learned to listen for its will in return. It started with the messages that began flowing in during meditation and breath work. A quiet internal voice I'd spent decades drowning out. And then the books found me. Some, again, back in the cycle. I just didn't get it the first time. It was as if my intention to listen was a magnet. I read The Secret, The Alchemist, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Prophet. They all arrived in succession, each one a key, but one arrived with the signature of divine humor, the Kabbalion. I was at a book fair, reaching for a different title. Sure, I had it in my hand, but when I got to the counter, I looked down. The cover was wrong. I was holding the Kabbalion. I hadn't picked it. I picked another book, and I was sure of it. I knew in that moment it was a special book, a direct response to my readiness. This was also the period of the great severance. I had accepted being ripped from my family and my country, forced to figure out a new landscape alone. It was the ultimate test of control, and I had none. But in the void, a strange grace appeared. I was given a gift of a temporary stay. A few more years to tie up loose ends, and most importantly, to strengthen the example for my daughter. My citizenship was restored temporarily until further notice, and that further notice did eventually come in the form of deportation. But because I had used that gifted time to root myself in this new trust, the final blow didn't feel like the catastrophic failure it once would have. It didn't feel as bad as it would have had I been torn away when she was still very young. The universe had given me precisely what I needed, exactly when I needed it, without me even knowing it. A leaf doesn't struggle to photosynthesize, it simply positions itself and receives the light. I had stopped fighting the seasons. I had learned to rely on a power greater than my own will, guided by the same immutable laws that make a seed crack and a leaf turn. This wasn't weakness, it was the ultimate efficiency. It was the beginning of true partnership with life itself. So, look at your own life, audit your own tools. What grew in the shade of your childhood? Was it your unique mushroom network? What thorns did you grow for protection? Where is your critical boundary setting strength? What in your life forced you to become a fruit-bearing tree, to provide for others? And when did you finally learn to stop fighting the sun and simply turn toward it? Your pain, your privileges, your experiences, they aren't random. They are your unique set of lockpicks. The very thing you thought disqualified you from the game are the specialized tools you need to play it. The universe isn't trying to give you an easier life, it's trying to give you a yours. And it equipped you for it from the very beginning. You just have to learn the name of your tools and what strange, beautiful, and powerful soil they were designed to grow in. Next time, we'll talk about what it takes to use these tools for the biggest cut of all, severing from the host system, the root break. That's in episode 3, the sovereign root.